Hello, and welcome to the Storied Human. My guest this week is Anika Pavel. She was born Jarmila Kocvarova in Czechoslovakia. What was intended as a 1 year stay in England turned her into a refugee when the Soviet Union invaded her homeland, writing a bloody end to the Prague Spring. She received a crash course in life that took her from sleeping in a telephone booth at the Victoria Railway Station in London to waitressing, to the lights of the fashion runway, and on to magazine covers, even a James Bond appearance under the more pronounceable moniker Anika Pavel. When the lights had dimmed, she returned to her first love, writing. Her work has been published in print, online, and also nominated for a Pushcart Prize. I just love your journey. I can't wait to hear more. Welcome, Anika.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's good to have you. So, I'm not sure people are super familiar with the Prague Spring. Could you enlighten us about that so we understand?
Right. So, for a long time after the Second World War, Czechoslovakia, as Winston Churchill famously said, an iron curtain fell between East and West, and we were on the east side of the Iron Curtain, whilst the NATO formed on the west side, and on the east side was what they called the Warsaw Pact. And right. Czechoslovakia was, for lack of a better word, belonged to Soviet Union and its influence. And so, but people were unhappy, and there was always shortages, and people wanted to, more importantly, travel. They just would like to see the world. And this was not up to the likings of the Soviet Union, which is very much like today's Russia. It's people have no personal freedom. And so when Alexander Dubček came to be a minister, to be in charge of Czechoslovakia, he wanted to introduce what he called socialism with a human face, i.e., you can keep a lot of the good stuff that was in the socialism, but he wanted to people be able to have a personal freedom, freedom of speech, freedom to travel, freedom to learn, to meet other people. And so I was extremely lucky that just at that time, I have graduated from high school, and I was able to get a job as an au pair in London. And so I came to London, and of course it did. The Prague Spring was exactly that spring. It lasted not very long. And then in August of 1968, Soviet Union just basically with tanks, just like they did with Ukraine, because we were even smaller, they just landed in Prague with tanks and occupied the country. And there was Czechoslovakia fell back into Soviet Union. There was a few fights, of course, there was some blood spilled, and the freedom was over. But I happened to be in London, and for a while things were kind of unsure, and I didn't know what to do. And then eventually I decided to stay in England, and that's how my journey began, under the duress of tanks.
Unbelievable. But you were so young. I mean, I know you were staying with someone, right? That was sort of a friend of the family. So you weren't totally alone, but they let you to your own.
Well, not really friend of the family. I was working as an au pair.
Oh, that's right. That's different.
So I had a job, and which was kind of interesting because it really wasn't a job looking after children. I was really helping with lodgers, but to me, it didn't really matter. Technically, it was not the right thing to do, but as far as I was concerned, I was thrilled. And the woman I was working for was wonderful and very supportive. So, I felt very, very lucky and very happy.
And the timing was so good that you were in London when that horrible thing happened. Now, were your parents okay? Was your family okay?
Well, my parents actually, as it happened, were visiting me, so they were with me in London, but my brother was in Czechoslovakia, and my father just did not want it to stay, and he felt my mother was fighting cancer, and so he did not want to burden me. He felt that my situation was very unsure, and so he felt that it would be best for me if he and my mother went back to Czechoslovakia. And so my two brothers and my father went back to where my brother was in Czechoslovakia. So they went and stayed there.
But they were okay.
Yes, they were
Now,
okay.
did your mother recover from the cancer?
Well, she fought the cancer for 10 years.
Oh
Eventually,
my goodness.
she died at the age of 60,
I'm
very
so
young.
sorry.
Yeah, but she fought violent battle, and and saw as much as she could, and I did as much as I could for her. And she always had a spirit of incredible resilience, and she was going to enjoy the life the best she could.
That's amazing. That's so wonderful because if you have someone going through that, you want them to fight and stay around for you as long as they can and for themselves. That's so
Yes,
cool that she had that spirit.
she sure
So,
did.
how did you end up sleeping in a telephone booth in Victoria Railway Station?
Well, it was a very interesting story because what happened, as I said, I wasn't exactly au pair, and the person I was working for was absolutely spectacular, a wonderful person, and she she used to work in what is now Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, and she used to work with her husband, and she was helping women. And I was so naive. I was 18 and stupid, naive. I had no idea. She used to do what they called a natural medicine, and she worked with a lot of people. But unbeknownst to me, she actually was performing. She performed several abortions to the girls, young girls who came, and so she wasn't licensed, and she went to prison. So I found myself, I went to meet with her lawyer, and he was supposed to secure me a bed in YWCA, and he got hauled up in court. So I ended up on a railway station until next day, and then I did get to go to the YWCA and stayed there
Good.
and got a
But
job in
still,
his office.
that that's so hard when you're that young, to have your world
Yes,
fall apart like that and to be alone in another country and not have a place to stay even for one night is crazy. You must have been
yes.
so afraid.
It was pretty frightening, but I had, often when you don't have a choice, I knew nobody in London, and I did not want to go back to Ipswich where I lived. And so, I just decided, how am I going to wait it out? So in my head, I was just waiting for the morning.
And it worked. I mean, he did come through and you got
He
situated
did.
at the
Yes.
YWCA.
Yes.
And then
The
what
next
happened
day I
after
went
that?
yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
were
After,
you
yeah.
were you legal? Like what was your status visa-wise?
Yes. So what happened was that when Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia, the British government gave permit, indefinite permission to stay in England, and also gave everybody work permit, which I think was very, very smart, because if you don't allow if you don't allow the people work, they are forced to somehow survive, and it's never in a in a it's harder. It's people
Of
may
course it
resort to
is.
stealing, or they are hungry, or do things that they normally wouldn't do. But I didn't have to do that because I had a work permit.
How
So
smart of
I
them. Yeah, you're right. That was smart. And with all
yeah,
of you there anyway, you might as well help and make it easy for you to do the right things and make a living. And then
exactly.
how long were you in London? And tell me about the transition to runway model. That kind of is intriguing.
Well, I actually lived in London for 13 years. And then, I worked at the office of the solicitor who represented the woman I was working for. And somebody, I think it was actually Mr. Cox who worked there, he said, "Hey, here is a Daily Mail. They're looking for a international model. You have an accent. Why don't you apply?" So I did. And lo and behold, I was selected to be one of the 10 girls they selected to do a fashion show for the new year. They always had a big fashion show over Christmas at Olympia, which is like a huge hall. And so I was one of the girls selected. And from there, I managed to get photographs. And so it basically went with these various hiccups. It went from there. I mean, it wasn't straightforward. I wasn't discovered and made millions, but I was able to, the usual, the working as a model during the day, working as a waitress at night, and I had a number of jobs. So it took a while before I was able to not work 2 jobs or 3 jobs.
Yeah,
Sometimes
it
I worked
does.
3 jobs.
It takes a long time to stop waitressing. I know. I majored in English and it took me years to equal my waitress salary.
Yes,
The
yes,
tips really helped. You don't have tips in London, but I know what you're saying.
yes.
So did you like it? Like being a model?
I enjoyed being model. It was fun. It gave me a certain amount of independence. I did try to write again, but when you start learning a new language, and at some point I realized I couldn't write in Slovak and I couldn't write in English because the
Oh,
2 languages were swirling in my head. And so it wasn't until I was 60 that I went back to school and I started to write again. But all that time, so, I did a lot of TV shows and until basically I got married. Even after I got married, I had a child. We were together with my oldest son. But then my husband and I went to Hong Kong for his business. And I was still hoping I will come back, but somehow I never did. We came to Boston, then we went to Monte Carlo, then we went to New Jersey, and suddenly I had 3 children.
oh my
And so
goodness.
I was busy with, being a mom, but
Yeah,
I was always doing more than one thing. I
yeah.
have taken took interest in my children. My daughter was a swimmer, and I was a swimmer, so I took the exam, and I became an official for USA Swimming, and I also did a fundraising. My neighbor was diagnosed with a brain tumor, so I did a lot of fundraising. I did for children with cancer. I did maybe 7 or 8 different charitable organizations that I raised money for, as well as for my daughter's swim team. So, and it was then I started to get back into writing because I had to write to newspapers about the upcoming events, and then I had to
Yeah.
summarize how much we raised, what we did, and then by chance I worked for a little bit as a editor in a newspaper, in a magazine, and then I got a dog from a shelter, and and he was the most beautiful dog, and I thought, how did anyone give up beautiful dog like that? And
Yeah.
I started to imagine scenarios, and I started to write these scenarios. And then my kids said, you know what, these are quite good, but if you want to write, go to school. So I went to school and I learned to write. And
Wow. Great advice from your kids.
yes, it was, at least when you write, the accent doesn't matter as much.
No, it doesn't.
Hopefully the English is
It
good
doesn't
enough.
matter at all. That's so
Yeah.
cool. I just I do love when people just sort of follow what comes their way and make something out of it. It's just a wonderful story,
Yeah,
because you're open. So you're open to whatever's in front of you. So
exactly.
you published children's books. You started with the children's book.
Well, I started to write the children's books, but it was very interesting story. So when I had a teacher and she said to me, we would get a various assignment, and she would say to me after about 3 or 4 assignments, I think you should switch to adults. And I say, why? She said, have you noticed when I give a choices of age group, you always pick the age group the oldest, and right for 16 to 18. And I looked back and I was, she's right. And so I switched, and I started to write, short essays, and I was very lucky. I had the wonderful teachers, and I went to writers' conferences, but I also took classes at NYU, Further Education, School of Further Education, and I had a wonderful teacher there too. And then I went to a writers' conference, and I kind of pick up a courage, and I submitted my stories. And lo and behold, the first one got accepted in a magazine. And so then it started to roll, several got, and then I entered competition, and then I got accepted there for writing for the book of, 15 best stories for, from around the world. And so then my children started to say, you should, we would like you to write more about Czechoslovakia and your background, because it will be good for us to know, and also for our children. So
Yeah.
I started to write more and more, but periodically I left it. I also wrote a fiction, and I
Oh, you did.
completed a set of 9 stories about for children. But ultimately, I always came back to this, and then I put it together as a book. And I had few people read it, and I had a very good response. So that's how it came about. Now I'm talking to you about it.
It's so wonderful. I love it because it sounds to me, I mean, of course, you worked hard and you had good teachers, but it also sounds sort of like organic. Like you just follow what, opportunities you see and you apply yourself. I think people could learn from that. Sometimes we try so hard to like think of exactly what we should do or plan out something. And you're like, well, I'll try this and then I'll try this. And before you know it, it makes sense. That's what I'm hearing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think it's often people are afraid to step out of their comfort zone. And so I didn't have a comfort zone. So it was easy for me to go all over the
You
place.
didn't have a comfort zone, right? You left that behind a long
I
time
left that
ago.
behind long, long time ago. So I
That's a
made
really good point.
comfort wherever I
Yeah.
was.
And
So
I think maybe that first teacher, she sensed that you had a story in you about yourself. She felt
yes,
it, like that you had
yes,
something important to say, that your own life was a story. So the book is several essays. Is that the book that's out?
yes, it's a collection of essays, and
Mhm.
it's not really a memoir. And it's not even autobiography, because it's also about a little country in the heart of Europe, about its people and a struggle during a war and occupations of various. Before Soviet Union, there was also obviously the Germans, and then it was part of a Austro-Hungarian Empire. My father was born Hungarian, in fact, Austro-Hungarian, and so it goes into members of. I write about some members of my family who had to go through a lot of difficulties. So it really is a story about people in a little country in the heart of Europe,
I think it's a
and I
good
kind of fit
reminder.
it somewhere.
It's a good reminder for us. I said to you earlier, people in America, just a lot of us are very insulated from what it's like. And we need to be reminded what it's like to go through things that you have no control over, that you didn't do anything. You don't deserve it. It's just where you live.
Right.
It's happening where you live. And I just think that's really powerful to remind us right now how hard it can be.
Right, right.
So what's the title of the essay book?
It's called Encounter with the Future.
And can people get that on
People
Amazon?
can get that on Amazon, or they can go on my website, www.anikapavel.com, and it will bring you straight. You just press the button and it brings you straight to Amazon.
That's great. So I would just love to hear what you would like people to know from your story. Like, what do you wish people understood?
I think people should understand that every one of us have a little pain, little laughter, and little story inside us, and every one of us need a helping hand occasionally. I was very lucky that I had a lot of people who gave me a helping hand, and I worked very hard as well. I never wanted to disappoint those who helped me. I did not want their help to go in vain, and it's just reminder that we are all basically the same.
Yeah, I think we forget that.
I may have an accent, but it's the same.
You want the same things out of your life, and the same things are important to you that are important to all of
Exactly.
us. It's
And we
important to
should
remind
also,
people.
right, and we should also remember that, there's somebody around us. If you look around people, everybody has someone in their family at some point who had an accent. It
Yeah,
may have
that's
not
true.
been like mine. It
It's
may
so
have
true.
been Irish or
Yeah,
Italian. Could have been Scottish. It could have
that's a
been.
wonderful idea to remember. My family came here 300 years ago, my mother's family. I had no idea. I did ancestry.com. I didn't know it was that long ago. But my great grandmother, still spoke German on the phone when she didn't want me to know what she was talking about. So, I'm older, but I can remember that. It wasn't that long ago. We all have
Right.
somebody. We all have somebody. That's a very good point.
Right. I mean, think about it. I have grandchildren, and they will be saying, "Hey, my grandmother had an accent."
She had an accent. Yeah. But I thought that was so funny. Like whenever I heard her speaking German, I knew it was so that I couldn't understand.
You didn't understand.
And I was kind of jealous that she had this secret language that she could use to cover up these conversations. And she had an accent. She had a really strong regional Pennsylvania Dutch accent. So
Right.
everyone does have someone. That's such a good thing to remember.
Right.
And is there anything else I would really like to know? I mean, you were very lucky and you had people who treated you well. Were there people who didn't treat you well, who made remarks about where are you from or your accent, especially
Oh, absolutely. I
during?
had, in my book, I write about when I was working in London in a fashion house, and there was a guy he used to always call me "Commie." Hey, you commie, and
That's
just
terrible.
he
That's so dismissive.
absolutely hated me because and always pretended that he didn't understand me. I knew he perfectly
Oh,
well that he understood me, but he didn't. It made me say it over and over again. So yeah, I accounted a cruel people, and but I also accounted a lot of kindness.
yeah,
So luckily, um, it all balances off, and we must
yeah.
not get discouraged by you know it's my mother used to say only stupid people don't want to learn.
I love that. Yeah, that's so good. And if you're like me, and I've now done 82 interviews, I think definitely from what people have told me and from what I feel in my heart, there's more good people than bad,
Absolutely. Without a
And
doubt.
that's important to remember because some of the messages that are in the media, they want us to be afraid or feel separate, but really there's more good people out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you
It's
never know who hears your story. I'm so glad you shared with us because it can be very inspirational for people and they can learn from hearing what you went through. So I really super appreciate it. And good luck
well,
to you with
good.
the book. I'll put it in the show notes and I'll put your website in there too.
Please. I'd like people to know about the tiny little country that most people don't know about, but it's a beautiful little country. And in fact, I'm going to do a little advertisement here. I read, because I like to read about traveling, and there actually was an article, I think it was in New York Times, about how busy it is, people travel, and things get crowded. There's a lot of crowds everywhere. And the article said that there's a little unknown place called Bratislava, which is, it's Slovakia, in Slovakia. And it's only about 45 minutes from Vienna, about an hour from Budapest. It's a little triangle, Bratislava, Budapest, and Vienna. And in Bratislava, there are no lines, there are no hustle, and it's every bit as beautiful as you will see in Vienna or in Budapest, but nobody knows about it. And also, because we always have been a small country, and because we always had to learn somebody else's language, whether it was Hungarian or German or Russian, we used to learn in different languages. So people who go there, they are pleasantly surprised that just about everybody speaks English.
How wonderful.
So,
Yeah, it sounds like a great secret, like a great place to go where you can avoid
right,
the crowds
exactly.
and still have that beautiful architecture and that really nice feeling that you get
Right,
in those more crowded places. Good. I'm glad you put that advertisement in. Well, thank you so much, Anika. It was great.
Thank you for having me. I
super
enjoyed it very
appreciate
much.
it. Oh, yeah. I always enjoy hearing stories, and yours was particularly timely and really good for us to hear. I
Right.
appreciate it.
Okay.